My name is Elena Carter, and this is the night my marriage ended, even though I was still wearing my wedding ring. It was our third wedding anniversary. I had cut my business trip short because I wanted to surprise my husband, Ryan. I believed love was built on effort, on choosing each other even when life got busy. I thought showing up early meant something. When I walked into the house, it was quiet. Too quiet. The lights were low, and the sound of my heels echoed across the marble floor. That sound used to make Ryan look up and smile. That night, it felt like an alarm going off in my chest. By the staircase, I saw a pair of high-heeled shoes. They were not mine. A silk scarf rested on the couch, casually placed, like it belonged there. I told myself not to assume the worst. Maybe a guest had stopped by. Maybe I was overthinking. Love has a way of protecting lies when the truth feels unbearable. Then I heard laughter upstairs, a woman's laugh, soft, familiar, and completely out of place. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs. Every step upward felt heavier than the last. My heart was racing, not from anger but from fear. There is a moment when your mind understands the truth, but your heart is still begging for a different ending. I reached the bedroom door and heard Ryan's voice clearly. "Relax. She is not coming back until tomorrow. You worry too much." That was the moment everything collapsed. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply stood there, realizing the man I married was not the man I thought I knew. In that instant, betrayal hurt less than the understanding that I had been sharing my life with a stranger. And I had no idea how far this night was about to go. I pushed the door open slowly, as if moving quietly could somehow change what I was about to see. Ryan stood there frozen, half-dressed, his face drained of color. Beside him was Madeline Brooks, my best friend from college, the woman who had cried with me at my wedding, the woman who had looked me in the eyes and promised she would always protect me. They were standing in my bedroom. For a second, no one spoke. The silence was thick and heavy, pressing down on my chest until it was hard to breathe. Then Madeline did something that hurt more than anything else. She smiled, not an embarrassed smile, not a guilty one. It was small, confident, almost relieved. "Elena, wait." Ryan started rushing toward me. "This is not what it looks like." I laughed, not because anything was funny but because my body could not process the shock any other way. I looked from his face to hers, then back again, realizing how carefully this betrayal had been built. The late nights, the missed calls, the sudden distance I blamed on work. Madeline crossed her arms like she owned the room. "You should calm down," she said. "This is private." Private, in my home, in my bed. Something inside me snapped. Not jealousy, not rage, it was humiliation. I raised my hand and slapped her. The sound echoed sharply through the room. For a moment, the world stopped. Ryan's expression changed instantly. The man who once held my hand when I had nightmares now looked at me with pure anger. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted. "Have you lost your mind?" Before I could speak, his fist slammed into my stomach. The pain knocked the air from my lungs. I bent forward, gasping, my vision blurring. "You embarrassed her," Ryan screamed. "Do you have any idea who she is? Her family has influence, power, and you think you can just walk in here and act crazy?" I stared at him from the floor, struggling to breathe. That was when I understood something terrifying. This was not a mistake. This was a choice. He did not see me as his wife. He saw me as a problem, a liability, someone disposable. In that moment, I realized betrayal is not just about cheating. It is about revealing exactly who someone becomes when they believe you no longer matter. Ryan did not stop after that first hit. He grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the staircase as if I weighed nothing. My feet scraped against the floor while I tried to steady myself, but the pain in my stomach made everything spin. I kept asking him the same question over and over, my voice breaking each time. "Why are you doing this to me?" He did not answer. He only tightened his grip. "You should have stayed quiet," he said. "You should have known your place." Those words hurt more than his hands. I had stood beside him when his business was nothing more than an idea and a borrowed desk. I had helped him prepare presentations, connected him with people I trusted, and believed in him when no one else did. And now he spoke to me like I was an inconvenience. At the top of the stairs, he shoved me hard. I lost my balance. Time seemed to slow as my body tipped forward. My leg hit the edge of the banister at an unnatural angle. There was a sharp cracking sound, loud enough to echo through the house, followed by a pain so intense it stole my breath. I screamed. I collapsed at the bottom of the stairs, my right leg twisted in a way it should never bend. Cold sweat soaked through my clothes as nausea rolled through me. I could not move. I could barely think. Ryan walked down slowly, looking at me with annoyance rather than concern. "Get up," he said. "Stop pretending." When I did not move, he kicked my injured leg. I screamed again, my voice raw and desperate. That was when Madeline spoke up behind him. Her voice trembled, but not with empathy. "Ryan, I think she is really hurt." He sighed like I was an inconvenience that ruined his night. What a mess. He grabbed me by the arms and dragged me across the floor, ignoring my cries, ignoring the blood on the marble. He pulled me toward the basement door and threw me inside like unwanted trash. As the door slammed shut, darkness swallowed me whole. "Do not give her food or water," he said to someone upstairs. "Let her think about what she has done." I lay there on the cold concrete floor, my leg throbbing, my body shaking uncontrollably. In that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. This was no longer about betrayal. This was about survival. I do not know how much time passed in that basement. Minutes and hours blended together in the dark. The cold concrete pressed into my skin, and every small movement sent a sharp wave of pain through my broken leg. I focused on breathing because if I stopped, panic would take over. At some point, the house above me went silent. That silence was worse than the screams. I reached into my pocket with shaking fingers and felt my phone. Somehow it had survived the fall. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, scrolling through contacts I had not touched in years. At the very bottom was a single name. Dad. I had not spoken to him in over 20 years. I had spent my life avoiding his world, convincing myself that independence meant never asking for help. But lying there, unable to stand, unable to escape, pride no longer mattered. I pressed call. The line rang twice before a deep voice answered, "Elena." The sound of my name almost broke me. My voice came out weak and unrecognizable. "It is me. I am hurt." There was silence on the other end, followed by the sound of movement, a chair scraping hard against the floor. "Where are you?" His voice was calm, but I could hear the tension underneath. What happened? My husband broke my leg and locked me in the basement. I hated how small my voice sounded. I hated that I needed him. But I hated even more that I might not survive the night without help. "Send me your location," he said. "Stay awake. I am coming." The call ended. I stared up into the darkness and let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. For the first time that night, I was not alone. And somewhere far away, a man I had run from my entire life was already on his way to bring hell down on the people who put me here. I was drifting in and out of consciousness when I heard footsteps above me. At first I thought it was my imagination. Then I heard shouting, not angry shouting, commanding, controlled, the kind of voice people obey without question. The basement door burst open and light flooded in, so bright it made me squeeze my eyes shut. A man in a dark suit rushed toward me and knelt at my side. "Miss Carter," he said gently. "My name is Victor Hale. Your father sent me." Those words barely registered before strong arms carefully lifted me off the floor. I gasped as pain shot through my leg, but Victor moved with precision, steady and calm. As we reached the top of the stairs, I saw Ryan on his knees in the living room, his face pale, his hands shaking as several men stood behind him. Madeline was sobbing in a corner, makeup streaked down her face, no trace of confidence left. I did not feel satisfaction, only distance. Outside, a black car waited. The door opened and I saw him. My father. Dominic Romano looked older than I remembered. His hair was gray now, his face lined with time. But his eyes were the same sharp and unreadable eyes from my childhood. When he saw my leg, his expression tightened in a way I had never seen before. "Elena," he said quietly. He reached for me, then stopped himself, as if afraid to hurt me further. Victor placed me gently in the car and my father sat beside me, his presence heavy and protective. I spent my life pretending I did not need him. But as the car pulled away from that house, I realized the truth. I had not escaped his world. I had only delayed the moment when it would save my life. The surgery was successful, but recovery was slow. I woke up in a private hospital room overlooking the city, my leg wrapped in heavy casts, pain pulsing with every heartbeat. Machines beeped softly around me. The room smelled like disinfectant and expensive flowers I did not recognize. My father sat by the window, reading reports like this was just another business meeting. When he noticed I was awake, he put everything aside and came to my bed. "You are safe now," he said. "No one will ever touch you again." I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "I do not want them hurt, not yet." He studied my face carefully, then nodded once. He understood before I finished speaking. Revenge driven by rage burns fast and leaves nothing behind. I was not angry anymore. I was clear. I told him my plan. I would return to the house. I would pretend to forgive Ryan. I would let him believe he was safe. People like him always make mistakes when they think they have won. My father frowned. "That house is dangerous." "I know," I said calmly. "But I need the truth. I need proof. And I need him to destroy himself." That was when he introduced Victor Hale properly. He would be my shadow, my protection. Always close, never visible. I was discharged days later. When Ryan walked into the hospital room with flowers and trembling hands, I smiled softly and told him it was my fault too. I said I wanted to move forward. I said I wanted peace. He believed me. As he held my hand, begging for forgiveness, he did not notice the small camera hidden near the ceiling. And as I smiled up at him, I made myself one promise. I would never raise my voice again. I would let the truth do the damage for me. Going back to that house felt like stepping into someone else's life. Ryan greeted me with forced tenderness, his hands shaking as he helped me inside. He spoke too much, apologized too often, and watched my face carefully, searching for any sign that I might still be angry. I gave him none. I smiled. I listened. I said I understood. People like Ryan mistake silence for forgiveness. They mistake calm for weakness. While he rushed off to work every morning, I stayed home and quietly rebuilt the truth. I knew his passwords. I knew his habits. I knew which lies he told first when he felt cornered. Within days, I had bank records, hotel receipts, and messages he never thought I would see. Then came the company anniversary gala. The room was filled with investors, city officials, and people who believed they were untouchable. Ryan stood beside me, proud, smiling for cameras, convinced the worst was behind him. When my name was announced, I stood and walked to the stage slowly, leaning on my cane. The room went quiet. I thanked everyone for coming. I thanked my husband for his patience and support. Then I said I had prepared something special. The screen behind me lit up. The first video showed Ryan with another woman in our home. The timestamp was from the night I lay in a hospital bed with a broken leg. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Before anyone could recover, the screen changed. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, gambling debts disguised as consulting fees, every number clean, every date precise. Ryan froze. I never raised my voice. I never insulted him. I simply explained what everyone was seeing. By the time I stepped down from the stage, Ryan was no longer a respected executive. He was a liability. And the room understood that without me having to say a single cruel word. That was the moment I realized something powerful. You do not need to scream to be heard. Sometimes the quietest truth is the most devastating weapon of all. The fallout from that night was immediate. Ryan stopped sleeping. His phone never left his hand. Every conversation ended in whispers and closed doors. The man who once walked through life with confidence now jumped at every sound. But the truth had only started to surface. A few days later, my father asked me to visit him, not at the hospital, not at his office. At his private study, a place he rarely allowed anyone to enter. He handed me a thin folder. Inside were old photographs, legal documents, and a police report that had never been filed. "This is about your mother," he said quietly. I felt my chest tighten. 20 years ago, two powerful families were involved in a construction project that ignored safety laws and silenced protests. Someone died, and your mother discovered proof of it. The photos showed men I recognized, Ryan's father, a business partner tied to his company. They were younger, smiling, standing in front of a site that would later be buried under paperwork and lies. Your mother was going to expose them, my father continued. She refused their money. She refused to stay silent. I stared at the images, my hands trembling. They called her death an accident. But it was not. In that moment, my anger transformed into something colder and heavier. This was no longer about a cheating husband or a broken leg. This was about a system that protected itself by destroying anyone who threatened it. I finally understood why my father had waited, why he let me choose my own path. Ryan was not the beginning of this story. He was just the next chapter. And now I knew exactly how it had to end. I did not rush after that revelation. Grief makes people reckless. I chose precision. With Lucas Bennett's help, I began to understand the structure of Ryan's company from the inside out. On paper, it looked successful. In reality, it was bleeding. Inflated contracts, hidden loans, assets quietly pledged as collateral without board approval. Ryan thought I did not understand numbers. He was wrong. While he scrambled to control rumors, I spoke calmly with shareholders who were already nervous. I asked simple questions. Where did this money go? Why was this debt hidden? Why were safety reports altered? I never accused, I only asked. Within weeks, an emergency board meeting was called. Ryan walked into that room believing he could still control the narrative. He did not expect to see me sitting at the table. As a shareholder, I had the right to be there. The meeting unraveled quickly. Auditors presented findings Ryan could not explain. Directors exchanged looks they could no longer hide. When the vote came, it was not emotional. It was practical. Ryan was removed from his position pending investigation. He looked at me like a man seeing a ghost. You planned this, he whispered as security escorted him out. I met his eyes calmly. You planned this when you decided I did not matter. By the end of the week, regulators were involved. Accounts were frozen. Deals collapsed. The same people who once praised Ryan now avoided his calls. I did not celebrate. Power taken in anger feels hollow, but power reclaimed with clarity feels different. I was not destroying his life. I was returning stolen truth to the people who deserved it. And Ryan was finally learning what it felt like to be powerless without anyone raising a hand against him. When everything finally stopped, the silence was unsettling. Ryan was under investigation. His company was in chaos. The house that once felt like a prison was empty now, stripped of its false warmth. I had achieved everything I thought I wanted. And yet, I felt nothing. I stood by the window one evening, watching the city lights flicker on, realizing that revenge does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, leaving you alone with yourself. I had imagined relief, satisfaction, closure. Instead, there was a strange emptiness, like walking out of a storm only to realize the damage was already done. My leg was healing, but something inside me was still broken. My father noticed before I said a word. He sat beside me and spoke softly. You won, Elena, but winning does not always mean peace. I thought about my mother, about the woman who had chosen truth over comfort, even knowing the cost. She did not fight for revenge, she fought because silence would have destroyed her. That night, I understood the difference. Revenge asks who hurt me. Justice asks who must be protected. And for the first time since that night on the staircase, I stopped looking backward. I started asking what kind of future I wanted to build from the ruins. I did not walk away from the wreckage, I stayed and rebuilt. With the board's approval and my father's quiet backing, I stepped into a leadership role Ryan never deserved. Not to prove anything, but to make sure the damage stopped with me. The first thing I did was open every file he tried to hide. Safety reports were corrected. Contractors were held accountable. Families affected by the company's shortcuts were finally compensated. It was not glamorous work, and it did not make headlines, but it mattered. People were surprised by how calm I was. They expected anger. They expected punishment. What they did not expect was consistency. I spoke plainly. I listened carefully. I admitted when I did not know something. Slowly, trust replaced fear. The company changed, not overnight, but piece by piece. Ryan watched it all from the outside, powerless to interfere. The man who once controlled everything could only observe as his name faded from relevance. One evening, as I signed the final restructuring papers, I realized something important. I was no longer reacting to what he had done to me. I was acting for who I wanted to become. That was the real ending of my revenge. Not when he fell, but when I stopped needing him to matter at all. If you are still listening, I want to speak to you directly. This story is not about power, wealth, or winning. It is about what happens when you ignore your own voice for too long. I stayed silent because I thought love meant endurance. I forgave because I thought patience would change someone who never planned to change. What I learned is this: love does not ask you to disappear. Forgiveness does not require self-destruction. And strength is not proven by how much pain you can tolerate. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining yourself and start protecting your future. If you are in a situation where someone is hurting you, controlling you, or slowly breaking your sense of self, please remember this: you do not need permission to leave. You do not need to wait for things to get worse. You are not weak for wanting peace. I did not rebuild my life by hating the past. I rebuilt it by choosing what would never happen to me again. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own struggles or your own quiet strength, I invite you to share it. Let others know they are not alone. Like this video if you believe healing is more powerful than revenge. Comment below where you are watching from or what this story made you feel. And if you want to hear more real stories about boundaries, courage, and reclaiming your life, stay with us. This is the art of revenge. Not the kind that destroys you, but the kind that sets you free.